We now solve the second question, that's this one here. And to begin with, I'll copy out the sequence at the top of the page. The first few terms are 4, 23, 66, 145, and 272. And we're asked to find the formula for the nth term of this sequence. Well, just as always, the first thing we should do is look into the differences between terms as we go from left to right. From 4 to 23, we're adding 19. From 23 to 66, we're adding 43. From 66 to 145, we're adding 79. And from 145 to 272, we are adding 127. We can see here that the amount we're adding, or the differences, are always changing. So we go ahead and look into the second differences. Those would be, from 19 to 43, we're adding 24. From 43 to 79, we're adding 36. From 79 to 127, we're adding 48. And we can see here as well that these second differences are always changing. So we go one step further and look into the third differences. From 24 to 36, we can see that we're adding 12. And from 36 to 48, we're adding 12 again. We can see, therefore, that the third differences are constant, meaning they're never changing. That means that we're dealing with a cubic sequence. And since we're dealing with a cubic sequence, it means it must have a formula that looks like un equals to an cubed plus bn squared plus cn plus d. And so our job now is to find each of the four coefficients a, b, c, and d. And to do that, we use our four equations for cubic sequences. Let me just add those four equations. There we go. So the first equation, we have 6a equals to the third difference. So in this case, the third difference is this number here, that's 12. So this first equation turns into 6a equals to 12. We move on to the second equation. 12a plus 2b equals to the first-second difference. Now the first-second difference is the first-second difference we have in this blue row here. So our second equation would be 12a plus 2b equals to 24. And I'll just box the 24 there as well. We move on to the third equation. 7a plus 3b plus c must equal to the difference between the first two terms. Well, the difference between the first two terms is this difference here, 19. So our third equation would be 7a plus 3b plus c equals to 19. We move on to the fourth equation, which is a plus b plus c plus d must equal to the first term. And looking at our sequence of numbers, we can see that the first term is 4. So our fourth equation is a plus b plus c plus d equals to 4. Those are our four equations. And we solve them going from top to bottom, meaning we start with equation 1, equation 2, equation 3, and we finish with equation 4. So let's go ahead. The first equation, 6a equals to 12. Well, dividing both sides by 6 leads to a equals to 12 over 6, which leads to a equals to 2. Now that we know what a is, we move on to the second equation, and that's 12a plus 2b equals to 24. But we know that a is 2, so that turns into 12 times 2 plus 2b equals to 24. That's 24 plus 2b equals to 24. And we subtract 24 from each side, which leads to 2b equals to 24 minus 24. That's 2b equals to 0, and therefore b is equal to 0. Now that we know what b is, we move on to the third equation, and that's 7a plus 3b plus c equals to 19. But we know that a is 2, and we know that b is 0, so this turns into 7 times 2 plus 3 times 0 plus c equals to 19. That's 14 plus 0 plus c equals to 19, and 14 plus 0, well, that's just 14. So this is 14 plus c equals to 19. Now subtracting 14 from each side of this equation leads to c equals to 19 minus 14, and that c is equal to 5. Now that we have c, we move on to the fourth and final equation, and that's a plus b plus c plus d equals to the first term, which was 4. And we know the values of a, b, and c. So this becomes 2 plus 0 plus 5 plus d equals to 4. 2 plus 0 plus 5, well, that's 7. So this is 7 plus d equals to 4. We subtract 7 from each side, which leads to d equals to 4 minus 7. And finally, we can state that d is equal to negative 3. Now that we have the values of all 4 coefficients, we can go ahead and state this cubic sequence's formula. And that would be un equals to 2n cubed plus 0n squared, which we don't bother writing, plus 5n minus 3. And there we have it. That's the formula for this cubic sequence.